Welcome to Cybersecurity Awareness TV, episode 383, January 22nd, 2022. I am your host, Mac Jackson Jr., cybersecurity consultant and researcher. If this is your first time to seeing our show here, we provide cybersecurity awareness news, information, and interviews to help protect yourself and your family from the fastest growing crimes of the 21st century. You can find out more about my company and this show by going to my website at macjacksonjr.com. That's macjacksonjr.com, or going to my company's website, and that's Vanderson Cyber Group, to help you develop policies and procedures and train your staff in cybersecurity awareness, education, and protection. And folks, I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners to our show from around the world. Here on Cybersecurity Awareness TV, we are on the Roku network under the WWDB TV network. Folks, definitely check out our episodes and all episodes on WWDB TV for information and for your well-being as well. In this week's, folks, we are talking about cybersecurity awareness trends of 2022, continuing our discussion this month for this upcoming year, of all the cyber threats that are happening around the world. We're also getting into a deeper discussion on ransomware, folks. Yes, ransomware, folks. I'm trying to bring it back to you guys again to let you know that this is an upcoming issue that's going to turn up even higher for 2022. And of course, as we do every week, on our third segment, we talk about things you can do to protect yourself. What can you do? Prevention, tips, and techniques. But first, folks, we'll start out with cybersecurity awareness news for 2022. We will continue this investigation of cybersecurity trends for 2022 during the month of January, and of course, in preceding months, any new changes in laws and regulations, we'll be going over those also. Top cybersecurity experts, including myself and others, have looked at organizations and seen the trend of organizations realizing that their companies are needing to invest in cybersecurity awareness, education, and prevention in order to combat some of these cyber attacks that are on the rise. Cybersecurity experts predict that within 2022, the attacks of malware and ransomware will be increased by as much as 80%, affecting all users. That's right, folks, 80%. And according to the U.S. Justice Department, 97% of all retailers have been hacked by some sort of cyber attack. Criminals are always looking for some sort of form of vulnerability within individuals, systems, and well as corporations. So what is next? Well, we will talk about this, of how you can avoid it, how you can avoid these cyber attacks. And the best way is through the investments within organizations, in which we said earlier that companies are doing and spending more money and investments in cybersecurity policies, procedures, and training their employees. In other words, understanding their vulnerabilities within their companies to fight against these types of cyber attacks. As these criminals are coming at more sophisticated levels of breaches and attacks on individuals, what we're doing here at Cybersecurity Awareness TV is to bring the information to you, and what experts are also talking about, things that you could do to protect yourself from it. New cybersecurity awareness risks and trends are being the focus for organizations in 2022. And folks, I have a video for you to show to you from News 9. Take a look at this.
Welcome back. When the pandemic hit, every line of business was impacted. As our workforce is trying hard to bounce back, cybercrime is reaching all-time record highs. Online cyber hackers are looking for new ways to infiltrate our lives, our homes, and the businesses that we rely on. To talk about what we can expect this year, we're bringing in Grayson Milbourne. He's the Security Intelligence Director at Webroot. Grayson, good morning.
Good morning.
So it's a new year, and how do you see cybercrime evolving in 2022?
Yeah, well, I think, what we've sort of seen is that, cybercrime will always continue to evolve. But I think one of the positives is that we're starting to see consumers and businesses alike become more and more cybersecurity aware. And one of the ways that we see this is, we have Data Protection Week coming up on the 24th. I think it's actually the 28th. Historically, this has been a one-day event, and now it's turning into a week-long event. And I think that's really important because when you think about cybersecurity, right, it's not like learning to cross the road and look both ways and, you learn it once and you're done. Cybersecurity really requires an ongoing attention to those changes. So I think the positive here is that we're starting to see more and more focus on this problem. And so that's making it harder and harder for cyber criminals to be effective now.
Yeah, more awareness is definitely key. What do you predict will be the new attack mechanisms that cyber criminals are deploying this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, here we are in 2022. It's amazing how quick time flies by. And again, here in 2022, we have another election year. So unfortunately, I think one of the ways that we're going to see cybercrime try to impact our lives is going to be going after media, and especially election-based news, and trying to kind of stir up some dissent against maybe the opposite side. I think the other thing that we're starting to see more and more of are malware distribution attacks that take advantage of software distribution chains. And so we hear a lot about supply chain attacks and how, we go to the grocery store and we see a lot of shelves that are empty. Those are a bit different from software distribution attacks, where hackers really go after a very popular type of software that maybe a lot of us have on our computers, and they try to attack that company and then use their software update process as a way to infect their targets. And so it's pretty insidious, but we saw some examples of that last year. And the economics of that from an attacker's point of view are really attractive, as they can breach one company and use them to infect tens of thousands of people.
Yes, if you're a company, how do you protect yourself? Is it as simple as, keeping up with those software updates?
Well, I think it is. I think, for companies, they need to also understand, what software they're using. I think, to solve this problem, it's really more on the software companies themselves, who need to really make sure that their software development process, their QAing and pre-release process is very locked down, so that hackers aren't able to get in and modify code unknown that then, can have a really devastating impact.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, Grayson, thanks so much for going through those. I appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
As you can see, folks, in this last clip, cyber attacks are definitely on the increase. And as you've noticed right now during this month, there is a increased tension going on and volatility going on in the Ukraine. And it has been now even pushed forward with more intensity, knowing that cyber attackers have trapped and damaged a website in the Ukrainian government. That may spurn other steps towards war. Hopefully this doesn't happen. Just as the security director talked about in this last clip, folks, it's just amazing what's going on there, and cybersecurity experts around the world are cracking down on these types of events, and we need to monitor it. And we'll continue this, folks, with another news clip I'd like to share with you from CBS News.
And Ukrainian officials are assessing the damage done by a massive cyber attack on government servers. The U.S. has condemned the attack and vows to help with the investigation. The hack comes as Ukraine faces a potential invasion by Russia. Some Ukrainian officials feared this type of cyber attack prior to Russian military action. We want to bring in CBS News cybersecurity analyst Chris Krebs. He is also the former director of the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Thanks for joining us, Chris. What do we know about the full extent of this attack, and what are the next steps for investigators following this breach?
Well, hey, good afternoon. It looks like over the evening, a number of different ministries, departments, and agencies for Ukrainian governments were attacked. They had their websites, so their publicly facing websites were replaced with a message in Ukrainian as well as Polish. And so some of the early speculation, or at least what it was made to look as if it was potentially a Polish operation. But as it turns out, some of the translation was a little sloppy on that Polish, potentially from further east, including a Russian language translation, maybe using Google Translator, something like that. So what we may be seeing here is a false flag attack. It's quite a low effort, low level of sophistication type of activity that would frankly spend resources right now where the Ukrainian government has to investigate. They have to churn. It's before a weekend, and it could really create some chaos and confusion across the government as well as the Ukrainian people. And in fact, these are the sorts of things that I would expect if an adversary is trying to soften up a target a little bit.
Yeah. Well, do we know how the hackers were able to infiltrate those systems, and what preventative measures do most countries have in place to keep this type of thing from happening?
So it looks like whoever did this in the Ukrainian government is indicating that it's potentially the Russian security services, but it looks like they exploited a known vulnerability, so just a hole in a system for a content management system, and that's what's used to populate websites. And so they exploited that vulnerability. They got in there and they put their own information up. And so what everyone should be doing, governments and private sector folks alike in Ukraine, as well as, I would suggest, in allied countries, including the United States, should really be taking a hard look at what your patch management process looks like and make sure that you've tackled some of those more commonly exploited vulnerabilities. And in my old agency, CISA has pushed out a good catalog of what those known vulnerabilities are. But look, this is just the beginning, I fear. I think decisions have been made in the Kremlin, and we will see an escalation, I would expect, over the next couple weeks, where not just kinetic, but everything up to the point of troops rolling across the border. And I would expect to see more cyber activity targeting Ukrainian government agencies, as well as their critical infrastructure, including energy, transportation, and probably most importantly, communications.
We should say we don't know for certain that Russia is behind this, but President Vladimir Putin is known for using hybrid tactics like attacking computer systems and energy grids prior to a ground assault. Is this type of cyber attack common for Russia? And if so, how might this hack be a pretext for a full-fledged invasion?
You're exactly right. This is in the playbook, the Kremlin playbook, as a pretext or preparation of the battlefield, so to speak. They did it in 2014, going into Crimea, and then they've used a similar sort of technique in Georgia, the country of Georgia, back in 2008, 2009. So we've seen this sort of activity before, but it is, again, this is low-level stuff. It's just the beginning. It's not really meant to destroy or create too much destruction. It is, I think, a psychological attack up front to confuse and have the Ukrainian government use their scarce resources. Again, I'd be looking for more disruption of services and critical infrastructure, in part to disrupt the ability to communicate and lose sight of what the adversary might be doing if they do, in fact, cross that border.
So at the same time that this is happening, in a rare cooperative effort, ironically, the U.S. and Russia have shut down the Russian hacking group REvil. So, I mean, what do you make of all that? What do you make of this joint operation? And why was the U.S. after this particular group?
I mean, ain't that some timing? It is quite convenient, right? And that's a lot of the speculation right now in both the Russian expert groups and the cybersecurity community, that this is a bit of kind of cyber gangster diplomacy, where the Kremlin is indicating, hey, we can do some stuff together here. Don't worry about Ukraine. That's not your problem. That's ours. And so that could be part of it. But nonetheless, the REvil gang was a cyber criminal gang that made quite a bit of money this year. And they were behind that, some of the attacks, some of the larger ransomware attacks earlier this year. And you know, my sense is that this is a bit of a flex by the Kremlin to say, look, we control our own space. We can do what we want when we want to do it. And let's try to have a conversation and get along. But REvil did fly a little bit too close to the sun, perhaps. They were much more aggressive, you know, going after pipelines and things like that. And, you know, and they made a lot of money, and they were also compromised by U.S. law enforcement, according to reports. So I think they were expendable, and the FSB, which is the Russian law enforcement or domestic security service, rolled them up. And I think it's a pretty strong signal out of the Kremlin. Strong signal.
I'm sure we're going to see more of this in the future. But Chris Krebs, you get 2 big thumbs up for your use of gangster and that fabulous 10 of the kitchen you have behind you. Thanks so much for joining us.
All credit to my wife on that one.
And as you see, folks, the good news about all this is government agencies from around the world are cracking down on these types of cyber gangs that are exploiting and locking down and trapping our infrastructure and within organizations for ransom using these types of malware attacks. This is the good news, and we must stay vigilant and protect ourselves from these types of cyber attacks. So folks, the best thing to do is always #StayCyberWoke, folks. We'll be back after these messages.
You can help limit the damage from identity theft with some quick responses. placing a fraud alert on your credit reports, filing a complaint with the FTC, and then filing a police report. Taking these steps will give you some important tools to deal with other problems that may come up, like charges you didn't authorize on your credit card, phone, or utility bills, like ATM withdrawals or debit card purchases you didn't approve, like getting a letter from the IRS saying someone has filed for a tax refund in your name. Keep records of your calls and copies of documents. If these problems do come up later, you'll have the necessary tools close at hand. For more tips and tools on dealing with identity theft, visit ftc.gov/ID theft. That's ftc.gov/ID theft.
Hi folks, welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. I'm your host, Mac Jackson Jr. And again, we're talking about ransomware, folks, 2022. For those of you, again, who are not familiar with ransomware, but if you're watching my show, you're definitely familiar with it. But for those of you who are new to our show, we want to let you know ransomware is definitely on the increase. It is an attack and a threat by hackers to hijack your electronic devices. And you're thinking, well, how could this happen? There are several different means for it to happen. And the most easiest way that hackers can do it is by sending you emails. Send you an email link. Matter of fact, you get an email link for someone else that has been hacked. And you look at this email message, and there's a link there. You click on it, and that click installs malware onto your computer that then sends it to the hackers and tells them that, yep, we got one, and we'll lock up their machine. And what ransomware does is locks up your computer and even your smartphone where you cannot use it. It's inoperable until you pay a ransom. Those you may think, well, we'll just use our backups. But folks, a lot of times these ransomware attacks are stored on your device and they don't launch right away. So therefore, they're doing that on purpose, waiting 3-6 months, sometimes these folks even a couple of years before they launch. And reasons why is because at that time where they're sitting on your hard drive or on your computer's device, they're floating there, allowing you to back them up. That's right, folks, you're going to do backups on your data. Now you backed up the ransomware. Ransomware is now backed up, and then when it strikes and you pay the ransom, what happens 3 months later? You get hit again because you've backed up the malware. So there are procedures and processes that you can go through to protect yourself. But I'm advising all of you, please check with your cybersecurity company, your IT departments, your legal departments, and make sure you have policies and procedures in place in your organization or company to help you with this type of cyber attacks. Because folks, these guys are definitely on the rampage. There's been several reports and still growing of hospitals in the healthcare industry that have been hit with these types of cyber attacks, where they have launched these attacks on hospitals and locked up the medical record systems where healthcare providers cannot have access to vital patient information, especially now during our pandemic. It's very, very important that this information is being accessed. And with this type of cyber attacks, they can no longer have access to it. So that's why hospitals, facilities, or other organizations, businesses must have policies and procedures in place to protect themselves from these types of ransomware attacks, where they encrypt the files and it cannot be used again unless they've been paid for it. Yes, there has been a crackdown on these types of ransomware attacks throughout the country, and things have been getting better, but however, hackers are still looking for other loopholes and vulnerabilities into the system. So what I can suggest for you folks, again, make sure that you train your employees within your organizations and at home as well. Because a lot of folks are working from home, and their home computer systems aren't as sophisticated and as locked down as their computer systems within organizations. In other words, your IT departments aren't visiting every employee's home and making sure that their router systems, their computer systems are locked down. Thereby, you're working from home, you're now vulnerable. You're now definitely vulnerable with ransomware attacks or other types of malware attacks. So folks, the best thing, again, like I said, is get yourselves educated, have your company educate you on these types of cyber attacks. And like I always say on this show, folks, the best defense against cyber attacks is through education. And that's what we must do. Hashtag, folks, stay cyberwooks. We'll be back after these messages. Hi, folks. I would like to welcome Ben Bowie from MyNiceTie.com as one of our newest sponsors for Cybersecurity Awareness TV. At MyNiceTie.com, they provide and are committed to providing classy neckties for the business community. At MyNiceTie.com, their motto is Wise Up, suit up, and stand up. You can find nice ties like the one I'm wearing now at myniceties.com. Hi folks, welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. I'm your host, Mac Jackson Jr. In this segment, we talk about what you can do, things you can do to protect yourself, tips to protect yourself from cyber crimes, from hackers. And we'll start off by talking of an interesting term that's happening a lot now in 2022, and it's growing, and that has to do with passwords, called passwordless. What means that we're looking to get rid of the passwords. So folks, let's think about this. We've had passwords established now for over 50 years or more, where we have a password to give you access to a computer application or nowadays a website. But that technique, folks, using a password is so old, and as the why millennials would say, that's so 5 minutes ago, right? We need to have a new sophistication. Cyber hackers are always and every day looking for vulnerabilities, and our passwords are first line of defense, and it's one of our weakest vulnerabilities. You've all seen stories here on this show on types of passwords that are continually being used that are the way that hackers can easily access your information, like the word password, for example, or 123456. It's incredible. People are using it because it's more convenience for them, and they need to be able to access to our systems easily. We need to have something different. Well, there's a new term now again called passwordless, and what this means is a method of authenticating your particular access to a website or an application using a third-party device such as a token ring or a token USB drive that you can insert into your laptop or desktop, and even on your smartphone, that will authenticate your accessibility to certain applications on the internet and even with in your organization using apps. So there's several different videos I'd like to show you regarding this types of technique. And remember, folks, our passwords are our weakest link to your data, and we need to have a new way of doing it. But before we do that, I also want to talk about how these credit cards as well, having the magnetic strip. Speaking of old technology, that's another old technology that's going on now. We have credit cards with a magnetic strip on the back of it that was created way back in the 50s, where we had tape recorder and reel-to-reel. That same technology we're using now in 2022, folks, that's just giving hackers a instant way of accessing your data. That technology needs to change, and the things that I have researched with cybersecurity experts around the world, that technology will be changing soon. So expect something happening to our credit card schemes of communicating and of e-commerce. We'll be coming up with new devices such as EMB chips we have in there now, giving you a layer of protection, which is great, but there's even more. Hackers are finding a way around that, so that shows some vulnerability as well. The newest one now, folks, is using passwordlessness, and here's a short video of you explaining to you what passwordlessness means to you. Check this out.
You may think your password is original, but in today's world, it's leaving you exposed more often than you think. It's time to go passwordless. Passwordless authentication verifies a user's digital identity with something other than a text-based password. Dragon123 was born in 1997 when Frankie chose their first password in a middle school computer class. And when Frankie got their college laptop, Dragon graduated to new numbers. Dragon Password grew up with Frankie, and when it was time to update, Frankie changed Dragon's variation again, and again, and again, and again. The truth is, no variation of Dragon is original, and it's been hacked thousands of times. Today, password vulnerabilities account for more than 80% of all breaches. Not only are Frankie and Dragon at risk, they're costing customer service departments time and money every time they need to reset. It's time to say goodbye to your password sweetheart. Auth0's passwordless authentication verifies user identity in a new way, like with unique biometric traits, such as a fingerprint or a face. This method significantly reduces risk, and Frankie is happy to adopt this approach because it allows them to prove who they are simply by being who they are.
And for those of you folks who are not familiar with passwordlessness and you're looking for a way to what can I do now to protect yourselves, think about having a password management system within your organization and at home on your home laptop, desktops, and smart devices as well. What a password management system is, folks, it is a software application that will encrypt all of your user ID and passwords for every website that you visit online. And it also will encrypt for you user ID and passwords for all applications you use as well. What this will do for you in its convenience is that it will encrypt it, whereas when you log into your system, you have to only remember one user ID and one password. And please make it a passphrase. We talked about that. If you're not sure what a passphrase is, take a look at our previous episodes of the show. But have this password entered in your system. Utilize this to access your data and your information. With this password management system, folks, you can also have it to periodically create new passwords for you, because it's been said by cybersecurity experts that you should change your passwords every 60, 90 days. Some of you even have policies within your organizations that you must change your passwords every 60 or 90 days. Having a password management system will make it easier for you. Now you can have a long password, up to some cases 25 characters if you must, upper and lower case and special characters. Please, folks, never, ever, and again I emphasize, ever, ever, never, write down your passwords on a sticky note and put it next to your computer system, folks. No, we don't want to do that. Or write on a piece of paper. What you've done, you take a blank sheet of paper that has a value of what? Nothing. And if you write down your user ID, password, and websites on that piece of paper, you have created currency, folks. And what I mean by currency is that all it takes is a second for someone to come behind you or standing next to you to take a picture of that piece of paper on your desk, and they can instantly sell it on the dark net for money, for Bitcoin value. That's right, folks. They can sell the information because there are hackers who will want that data. So rather than having it written down on a piece of paper, put it in a password management system, give you an extra layer of protection. Here's another video I'd like to show you about passwordlessness from the large corporation called Microsoft Corporation, folks. Check this one out.
We're living in amazing times. The old security paradigms no longer apply. We need to transform our approach to security as well.
Look, the only people in the world who love passwords are hackers, because they're hard for humans to remember and they're easy for hackers to guess.
You really need to do more to protect your business.
The first thing everybody should do is go turn on multi-factor authentication. That will cut your risk of attack by 99.9%. We are moving from a world where usernames and passwords are the standard to a world where passwordless authentication is really the standard. So for Microsoft, the best way to see that is with Windows Hello. You just walk up to your PC and using your face or your thumbprint, you can log into your PC. If you don't have a PC like that, though, you can use the Microsoft Authenticator. You just use your phone and you use your thumbprint or your face on that. And then a whole bunch of new solutions are on the way based on a new set of open standards. Those are called the FIDO2 set of standards. Things like USB keys and badges and wearables.
In order to help everyone be more secure and productive in a world without boundaries, we collaborate across Microsoft, across our industry, and with security experts around the world.
Passwordless authentication is really taking off. Last month, 85 million people logged in using Windows Hello or the Microsoft Authenticator, and then they could get to all of our cloud services. That's really the trend for the future, and it's growing really fast.
It's essential for companies to protect both the privacy and the security of its end users. We are always asking how we can help you to keep them even safer.
So yes, folks, with all this new technology now, especially passwordlessness, it makes us think that there are some things coming up in the future in 2022 that corporations like Microsoft and others are creating for multi-factor authentication to protect our passwords and protect our security online. And yes, every time we create something new, the hackers will always look for vulnerability. Because folks, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week investment that some of these gangs and nation states have to find vulnerabilities. We must stay vigilant. And that's why you have companies like mine and others, cybersecurity awareness experts from around the world. And that's our job and our duty is to bring that information to you. As we continue, folks, let's continue this talk of other things you can do to protect yourselves. Now, we talked about passwords, multi-factor authentication, making sure that your password is long, using a password management system. Those are all good. Also, when you have your smart device, always check your checking account, your financial statements. And I say this to folks because, usually we don't check our financial statements. We wait till we get our bank statements in the mail. We have the technology of our smart devices. Log into your bank every now and then and check your bank balance. See any suspicious activity. If you can report it to your bank institution, your finance institution right away, more than likely you can get those situations reversed and handled. Also, if you're purchasing things online, use a credit card over a debit card. And yes, I've always talked to people about make sure you have a credit card used. What you're using for a credit card is you're allowing the bank's leverage, using their money to protect your interest, rather than using a debit card where all your funds are there, and if they're locked up, you can't have access to them, you can't have access to your money. So definitely take a look at those options as well, folks. These are just some of the things that we have for you here at Cybersecurity Awareness TV, and we definitely appreciate all our viewers or listeners to be part of our show, folks. That's all we have this week, folks, on Cybersecurity Awareness TV. You can find me online, folks, at macjacksonjr.com. That's macjacksonjr.com. Send me your emails at mjackson@mjcc.com. You can also give me a call. Here's my phone number again, 702-868-0808 with your cybersecurity questions. Glad to talk to you, folks. Stay tuned next week. We'll have another great show for you here at Cybersecurity Awareness TV. Take care.